Jason's partner. She was shivering, she was crying. There was a blood-soaked large chef's knife right on the table.
Mystery in paradise.
She said, Jason has been upset, and he went into the bathroom and I heard a thud.
The Aussie resort manager found dead in Fiji.
What do you think happened to Jason in that room?
Foul play.
Authorities said there was nothing suspicious.
We've got to get that bloody police report.
But Jason Rigby's family knew otherwise.
He had wounds across here and a big one here. That's a huge attack.
On 60 Minutes.
My name is Christina Ahern. I'm a reporter with 60 Minutes.
We're not sure if they're frightened or whether they feel threatened.
A family's desperate search for the truth.
Do you think it was a cover-up?
That's why we're here, to figure out what happened.
Welcome to Extra Minutes, the 60 Minutes podcast. I'm joined by Laura Sparkes. I'm Christina Ahern.
Oh, hello, Christina.
Hello, Laura. Today we are discussing a real murder mystery, and we travelled to Fiji. Do you want to give people just a little bit of a synopsis about the story?
Yeah, I mean, this was a story that it began in December when Jason Rigby was found stabbed and dying in his apartment. By his girlfriend and his friend, and we followed it through. We spoke to the family for a number of months. The family were just heartbroken and couldn't understand what had happened because the hotel had told them that he had died from suicide. That didn't ring true to them. So when we started looking into it, we were questioning a lot of things and kind of understanding why the family were questioning it because it didn't seem right to us. I mean, he was a man who went off to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and said, I'll be back at the 8:30 meeting, and never turned up and supposedly stabbed himself and died.
I think initially when you hear that someone has taken their own life, there are sensitivities around that, and you do question, look, this could have happened. But I think when we kind of started looking into it a bit more, as you say, the circumstances around it, and started talking to professionals in the area, we're talking, forensic scientists that have had decades of experience. The thing that struck me is that Jason just didn't fit the mould of someone that would do this. Particularly the forensic scientists we spoke to said, there's a whole lot of factors that would be alarm bells ringing up, signposts ringing up to something like this happening.
When you stab yourself, it's quite a violent act. It's a really terrible self-destructive thing to do, and usually people that do that are psychiatrically disturbed.
So I think after speaking to those professionals, I think early on, and the family of course, I think early on for me, I realised that, this is not what those two witnesses in the room say. What about you? Is that the moment that you thought, look, this is something more than what they're saying?
Yeah, but as you know, as journalists, we didn't have any real evidence, and we were trying to get the autopsy. We didn't really want to go to Fiji without that, but the police file, we wanted to see the evidence of what they had, and the family were being told by their lawyers that they'll get it, and then they never got it. And so in the end, we decided this is all too strange. We knew that the court case was coming up, and so we went, didn't we?
And we did. And I have to say, the Fijian legal system, not easy. It's something that's obviously very different to Australia. It operates in a different way. And that court case, I think, we kind of didn't know what we were going to get. But in the end, the family actually had quite a significant victory. Yeah,
I mean, it was interesting for me because I would be talking to the family and saying, what has your legal team told you? And they'd be saying, well, it's happening, there's going to be this inquest, but then it never happened. And I can understand their frustration and their, bewilderment. Because it's a system that we don't know, that we don't understand, and it must be so hard for families who are going through enormous grief to then have to navigate this legal system. But I mean, to be honest, as you know, when we got there, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen at this court
and
hearing.
I think a lot of people don't know that it actually, the story changed significantly. That moment that the Fijian police told the family, this is Jason's brother Chris and Jason's dad Peter, for the first time, this is a murder investigation. This is a crime. I mean, that was something significant. That was something we weren't expecting, that they were going to come out and say that.
No, that's right. We thought the whole point of the family visiting the police was to say, make this a murder investigation, and they had their private investigator that they've, spent a lot of money on to try and help them navigate this legal system and work out what happened over there. They had him in tow, and I actually think the fact that 60 Minutes had been contacting the police quite a lot, virtually weekly, and it got up to daily towards the end just before we left. And we couldn't get anything out of them. But I do think that helped as well, because they realised that the spotlight was on them.
Do you think also, Phil, the private investigator, he managed to get Jason's WhatsApp messages, and from what we learnt from the family, when they actually went in with police and said, look, we've managed to get all this evidence, it became clear that the Fijian police were also like, they can actually help us. They can actually help our investigation. If we give them a bit, we're going to get these WhatsApp messages and whatever else Phil, the private investigator, can give us. So you got the feeling that all helped as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, let's remember, this is a story about a man who's walked back to his apartment, supposedly. His girlfriend says he walked into the apartment, she heard a thud in the bathroom, and she walks in, and there's a knife in his hand, and he's been stabbed. She rings his best friend, the executive chef of the hotel, and he comes in and then rings the person that you interviewed, Arushi, who also worked at the hotel. She comes in, Jason's lying on the floor in the bathroom, bleeding. The knife's on the desk, placed quite unusually, wasn't it?
The knife was right in the middle of the dining table. It looked like it was kept there and not thrown away. That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
That was something that struck her and certainly struck me is, you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of these people. But the knife was placed neatly on the dining room table. Jason was found in the bathroom. So someone has picked it up and put it perfectly there. I think that's strange. The family certainly thinks that's strange. Arushi, the friend, also thought that was peculiar. The other thing too is, as you're going through this version of events, the first thing none of these people are doing is calling the ambulance. They eventually did, after, reportedly, according to their version of events, after Ian Lovey, the best friend, got into the room and called Arushi. That is when that he said to Arushi, call an ambulance. That's minutes that have passed since then. And also, from all reports, no one's tried to do any kind of, from what we can gather, first aid or CPR on him.
No, and then there's that odd account that Arushi gave you that they were trying to drag him out of the bathroom and he started screaming all of a sudden. And so then the best friend, Ian, as Arushi tells it, was slapping him on the face.
We tried to pull him out of the bathroom. He was kind of stuck. There was only so much space. And when we tried to do that, he almost sprung into life. He just had the most violent sort of a reaction to us pulling him, and he started kicking and screaming. He couldn't make any sense. And then my colleague, he slapped him and said, Jason, we're trying to help you. Shut up.
And look, even the forensic scientist we interviewed said that's odd behaviour, because no matter what, even if someone is acting erratically, and for argument's sake, let's say we believe their story that he did take his own life, he wouldn't be acting in that way. But even if he did, acting erratically for whatever reason, and we don't know, the last thing you would do for someone who has got chest wounds is to slap them. So that was something that also really struck me as odd, that there's a whole lot of things in these stories that are bringing up more questions than answers. I also want to ask you about another point, and that is the knife. Now, whilst we were over there, we found out some quite significant developments about the knife.
Yeah, we discovered that the knife had been bought in Fiji and it hadn't been bought by Jason. The family said Jason was not a chef at all. In fact, I think his brother Chris said to you, I've never seen him cook a meal in his
Ever.
entire life.
Yeah. And it was not a cheap knife. It was quite costly, which is what we found out. So the big question we have is, do police have this investigation? What have they found out about the knife? Have they got fingerprints, all that kind of forensic information? But what's frustrating for you and me, and the family, of course, first and foremost, is we don't know what the police have got.
No. And I guess if that was in Australia, the same thing would be occurring, wouldn't it? We wouldn't know what the evidence was exactly.
The family would have a little bit more of an idea,
That's
I think,
true. Yeah.
if it was in Australia.
But what we do know is that both the girlfriend, Shivani, and the best friend, Ian, went to Crown Plaza where they work and both said he died from suicide. And then the Crown Plaza themselves sent out a media release to the newspapers saying that he died from suicide. And so that they controlled the narrative. And the police didn't actually change that in any way. They didn't say, oh, no, by the way, it's a murder investigation. And you asked the family, do you think that's a cover-up or
a mistake?
A mistake.
And I think it's clear, tourism's very big in Fiji. You don't need to be incredibly smart to figure out that a murder in a hotel is not a good look. We don't know for sure if it was a cover-up. We don't know if they were mistaken. But what we do know is in Australia, or in fact pretty much anywhere around the world, when someone dies in a hotel, you do not put out a media release saying... Usually you don't put out a media release at all. But if you are going to put out a media release, you don't say there's no criminal investigation when the police investigation hasn't concluded and an autopsy hasn't been done. That's extremely rare for that to occur.
And what else is extremely rare is to actually die from suicide by stabbing yourself.
Yes.
The forensic pathologist you interviewed, Professor Roger Byard from Adelaide, was saying that there's, I think, 3% of cases of suicide are via stabbing. So this is highly unusual. And what struck me too, and sometimes, the family can get lost in all this mystery, is just how much it's actually hurt the family that this was, by the hotel, put out straight away that it was a suicide. This is really, I think they described it as agony for the family, that this was not immediately treated as a murder investigation. As the forensic scientist, Professor Bayard, said, it always should be. Any stabbing, no matter what, should always be treated as a murder investigation. I want to ask you about something else, because we discovered twists and turns to this story right throughout our trip to Fiji. But when the private investigator, Phil, was looking at the WhatsApp messages, he discovered something about Jason's private life. It was quite interesting, wasn't it? It was. I mean, those WhatsApp messages were they were a treasure trove of information, because we started to understand what was going on privately in Jason Rigby's life. I mean, it's very unusual to get hold of these messages, and it was the private investigator's forensic hacker, so to speak, who managed to get them. But in them we see Jason, you see the start of Jason's relationship with Shivani, which starts a little rocky. You see the relationship that he had with his mate, Ian. It was a good time. They had a lot of good times together. But then there's another woman. You see there's another woman that he was seeing. And there seemed to be this crossover between the first woman and Shivani of about 4 or 5 months. And then we found out that she fell pregnant and lost the baby. So... It raises questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, the thing is we don't know definitively if this has got anything to do with Jason's death, but what it's doing is painting a picture of what is going on. It, of course, raises more questions, and there are a couple of people that have answers, and they were the 2 people in the room when Jason was laying dying, and that was his girlfriend, Shivani Siwan, and his best friend and executive chef of the Crown Plaza, Ian Lovey. Now, we had to track them down in Fiji. It wasn't easy.
No. Well, I
took
mean,
up a lot of time.
Yeah, Shivani worked in a fairly open area, but she was tricky. I don't think she was going to work every day. But finally, you were able to approach her. I was surprised at her response because, I mean, let's remember these two people refused to speak to the family. Shivani did speak to the family right back when Jason died, but has refused to speak to the family, since earlier this year. Ian Lovey has never spoken to the family, never expressed his condolences to the family.
And this is his best mate, Jason's best mate.
Yeah, and if it was suicide, what is there to hide? Why aren't they speaking? Why aren't they being open? And your approach, of course, being approached by a film crew is always tricky and difficult and frightening. That's why we were so careful in the way we did approach her. And our crew and myself hung quite a way back from you.
Yes, it's sometimes hard to tell this on the television, but we didn't want to go right up to Shivani straight away. We wanted to introduce myself first, why I was there, what I wanted to question her about and give her an opportunity to kind of come out. But I have to, as she arrived in an Uber and I went up, the crew and yourself hang back and, I said, my name is Christine Ahern, I'm a reporter for 60 Minutes. And she quite aggressively told me to get lost and slammed the door, almost got my hand in the door.
Hi, Shivani. My name is Christine Ahern. I'm a reporter with 60 Minutes.
Can you just get lost from me?
For someone who was Jason's girlfriend, for someone who has said he took his own life, for someone who has heard the family desperate for answers, I thought that was odd.
Yeah, I mean, what's even more strange is that the family's private investigator, Phil, reached out to Shivani months prior. She finally answered him a couple of days before you approached her. And in that email, she said she wanted protection. And you and I have discussed this at length. It's like...
Protection from what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Shivani is scared. I think if you read that email, she's scared and she wants protection. So, I mean, the plot thickens, really, doesn't it?
It does. And so the other person that can give us answers, Ian Lovey, he works in the Crown Plaza Hotel. So, just a bit of logistics. We're not allowed on. And he lives and works in that area owned by Crown Plaza. So we couldn't actually physically get access to him. But we did get his phone number. We did call him. And as you would have watched, I didn't even get basically my name out before, I said, Kristen Ahern, 60 Minutes, I want to ask you a few questions about, and he hung up on me straight away.
Hi Ian, my name is Christine Ahern. I'm a reporter with 60 Minutes. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions in relation to
Again, strange behaviour.
And that's, I think, what is really bugging the family. And we spent a lot of time with Chris and Pete.
Beautiful people.
Beautiful people and just two regular blokes from the Gold Coast, and they've been thrust into this situation. I have to say, I don't know your opinion, but I just thought they were doing a remarkable job from coming from no idea about the legal system or police system in Fiji to navigate it all. But, they say they're not going to give up till they get justice for Jason.
Yeah, they're fueled by their grief and their heartbreak. And, It's Chris's brother, it's Pete's son, and it doesn't make sense to them. I think if it made sense, they wouldn't be pushing, but that they are passionate, they are obsessed, and they want justice for Jason, and I can understand that. I mean, I really, really felt for them. That time we spent with them. I mean, it's just so hard. To not know what happened.
And hopefully this story can help the Rigby family get answers. If you missed the story on Sunday night, you can catch up on 9 Now or 60 Minutes YouTube channel.